Now, I contemplated where I wanted to go in terms of the clips that have been circulating regarding Ben Shapiro over the last week. He's gone on CNN with Jake Tapeworm. He has gone on multiple outlets that have given him grace to talk about the threat of anti-Jewish hatred, etc. Talk about how much he hates Zoran. But really what he's most resentful about is that he is not able to corral the Christian Zionists into his flock anymore. See, he's made a lot of money over the years doing that. And now with the likes of Tucker, Candace, and Fuentes, he's not getting away with it like he used to. And now he, in a sense, is spiraling completely out of control. Ben Shapiro is one of the most spineless little weasels in all of politics. And so when he went on his 40-minute rant online the other day to call out not just the three people that I mentioned, but a handful of others that they've associated with, who have you been speaking to? This is not very good. On top of everything else, he's trying to play the "you're not loyal to Donald Trump" card. This is a guy who went out of his way not to support Trump back when Trump truly was conducting himself as a populist in 2015 and 2016. He was as anti-Trump as you can possibly get. Now that Trump literally is on his hands and knees for the Zio state on behalf of Miriam Adelson and many other Zio billionaires that carried him back to the White House, now he loves Trump for all he's worth. Always pay attention to who your friends are and who your enemies are. If you have a friend like Ben Shapiro, then you're not a friend of mine. But here's what his ranting and raving is all about, starting with Nick Fuentes.
Josh Hammer and Mark Levin, fuck these people. Like, deeply, seriously. All real Americans, if you are a real American, if you were born in this country, I don't even care who you are, what you are. If you are a real American that loves this country, you have generations in this country, your family or you fought for this flag, fought for the Constitution, fought for our church, fought for our civilization. For all of you, I say about Josh Hammer and Mark Levin and Laura Loomer, fuck them. Fuck them. Deeply, seriously, get them the fuck out of our country.
Now, I just want to say, as I have pointed out time and again, because of the fact that there isn't this overall consensus in left populism about what the real problem here is, you are ceding all of this real estate to Fuentes, and he is going to continue to grow because he is not corporate backed. He has an incredible platform, and it's almost exclusively on Rumble. So I would say the most telling part of all of this, which is probably what really shook Shapiro up based off of the conversation that transpired between Fuentes and Carlson, was how Shapiro came after Fuentes in his very early stages as a commentator. And he didn't bury him. Probably tried his best. He didn't do it. And now that Fuentes is becoming a real threat to power, they're trying to come after him with everything they have. But they don't have much. In fact, according to friend of the show, Vosh, he said it to Ben Shapiro in a clip the other night. He said, "You've already lost." He said, "It's already over. You just don't know it yet." If Vosh is saying that, better start making plans, pal. Take with that what you want.
Nick Fuentes, it should be mentioned, despises Donald Trump and the MAGA movement as well.
Not that that's a bad thing. I wouldn't say, and again, there has to be a separation between the two. You don't want to have you want to have a split from the president of the United States? You know, you constantly hear and have heard nonstop for the past how many fucking years from every blue no matter who, blue MAGA sycophant that's out there about how no one questions their dear leader Trump. And what we have seen over the past less than a year is that, oh, we're not on board with this shit. This is not what we signed up for. And yet you still see people out there on their hands and knees for the Democrats. You see Pete Buttigieg lauding the 2 CIA agents that they just elected into the governorship in New Jersey and Virginia. But not a word about Zoran winning the mayoral race. The indoctrination is real because, as Jen likes to say, there are way too many people in this country that need upper management. And they're not willing to question their dear leaders. There's more to say.
Fuck you. Fuck you. You suck. You are fat. You are a joke. You are stupid. You are not funny. You are not as smart as you think you are. You are, and honestly, and if you watch my show, you know I've been very critical. I've never been this far. This just goes to show this entire thing has been a scam. When we look back on the history of populism in America, we are going to look back on the MAGA movement as the biggest scam in American history. And the liberals were right. The MAGA supporters were had. They were.
Which is absolutely true. Now, let's be more clear about this because you're referring to people that supported an America First agenda, hence MAGA. You have to distinguish between those people that are strictly doing MAGA for the purpose of grifting, the purpose of making money. If you're talking about Benny Johnson, if you're talking about Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro, heck, even Megyn Kelly, Gunther Eagleman, I could go on with every one of these grifters, and you know there's a shitload of them that are up the Democratic Party's ass. Those are the people that suck. Those are the people who do not give a damn about this country. They just care about lining their pockets. But there's a lot of working class people in this country who are so desperate that they got on board with the Donald and thought he's going to save the day. He's not bought by the system. Yes, he is. Elon Musk is bought by the system. Elon Musk is the richest person in the world because he has a monopoly on government contracts for his space and car programs, among other things. You think he's some fucking genius that just has all this money and all this power? No. It's a lot worse than that. A lot more sinister than that. But yes, people were had. Millions of people were had. And they're starting to wake up to that reality.
So that right there is just a brief glimpse into the twisted mind of Nick Fuentes. And there's plenty more where that came from. Of course, hours of it per day, in fact. And there's no doubt that Nick Fuentes has a lot of play these days. That's because the left, by moving into a politics of anti-white, anti-Christian, anti-male identitarianism, created its bizarro mirror image, a white pseudo-Christian incel identitarian movement dedicated to destroying the institutions of this country and replacing Americanism with something else.
There is no such thing as Americanism if it's associated in any way with Israel. And that's the hard lesson that this grifter son of a bitch is going to learn, and he's going to learn it quick. The Daily Wire is crumbling. He, of course, as he always does, is peddling a book, another book. Lord knows he doesn't write them. Most of them don't. He's scared. And he should be. He's one of those people. I personally would drop him in The Hague. I know some people want to drop him in the middle of Gaza and let the chips fall where they're going to fall. But he is a really sinister, evil bastard. And he's such a little whiny bitch. But there's more.
Nick Fuentes' philosophy is not fully formed. It's an incoherent stew of malignity. But that's where Tucker Carlson enters the story. Now, since his exit from Fox News in 2023, when, of course, he was a very, very popular host, Tucker Carlson has turned himself into a conspiracist and a crank and a pathological liar. Tucker excuses Vladimir Putin's murderous and barbarous reign. He has even become one of his most ardent defenders.
It is so much nicer than any city in my country. I had no idea. My father spent a lot of time there in the 80s when he worked for the U.S. government and barely had electricity. And now it is so much cleaner and safer and prettier aesthetically. It's architecture, it's food, it's service than any country, city in the United States that you have to, and this is non-ideological. How did that happen? How did that happen? And at a certain point, I don't think the average person cares as much about abstractions as about the concrete reality of his life. And if you can't use your subway, for example, as many people are afraid to in New York City because it's too dangerous, you have to sort of wonder, like, isn't that the ultimate measure of leadership? And that's true, by the way, it's radicalizing for an American to go to Moscow, I didn't know that, I've learned it this week, to Singapore, to Tokyo, to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Because these cities, no matter how we're told they're run and on what principles they're run, are wonderful places to live.
I want to keep in mind, really quick, that if you visit a lot of different places, not third world, but developed countries around the world, in Europe, in Asia, Australia, in many parts of Africa, you know what you discover? The countries in question care about their people. Their food is healthier. They have health care. They have not-for-profit education opportunity. Learn a skill. Remember, you can go to places in Europe, particularly in the UK and Germany, where they'll pay you to learn a skill that the country needs and have a career. You don't have that here in the United States. And the average supermarket that you go into, if it isn't a high-end one like Sprouts or even Trader Joe's, well, it's understandable why people feel one way about America and another way entirely once they have the opportunity to get out and explore the world and see what it's all about. Heck, even going into Canada, you'll see, and probably Mexico too. Our country, not yet. This is, again, another example of the classist ideology that those at the top try to rain hell down on the rest of us by saying, how could you say such a thing? How could you celebrate Tucker Carlson going to Russia? First of all, the Russophobia is so effing ridiculous at this point. But to suggest that there isn't greener pastures in other parts of the world, I'm not buying it. You're going to have to explain yourself, young lady, because I'm sure there's, like any country, there's going to be things that are good and things that are not so good. So there is more to go.
So I guess you put in 10 rubles here and you get it back when you put the cart back. So it's free, but there's an incentive to return it and not just bring it to your homeless encampment. I went from amused to legitimately angry. So we were guessing what this would cost. Everybody hears from the United States, buys groceries, and we didn't pay any attention to costs as we were just putting in the cart what we would actually eat over a week. And we all came in around $400, about $400. It was $104 US here. And that's when you start to realize that ideology maybe doesn't matter as much as you thought, corruption. If you take people's standard of living and you tank it through filth and crime and inflation, and they literally can't buy the groceries they want, at that point, maybe it matters less what you say or whether you're a good person or a bad person. You're wrecking people's lives in their country, and that's what our leaders have done to us.
Who is this Tucker Carlson, I ask? Who is Marjorie Taylor Greene? I'll tell you who I think they are. I think that they are still right populists for sure, to be fair. However, what I think is crystal clear is that they, as much as anyone with real power and influence, understand the fragility of the situation that this country is in right now. And they're sounding the alarm as loudly and as clearly as they can to let people know that things are not only bad, but we can assure you that it isn't a situation that can't be rectified. Other parts of the world understand how it's done. Our system has completely run its course in its current state. And so while I caught our good friend who says that Russia is not all it's cracked up to be, I'm sure it isn't. I'm sure there are better examples than Russia. But it's just one example in how we do not do business here in the States the way that we are capable of, because the system's broken. This current system is broken beyond repair. We need something else, and quick.
When Tucker Carlson interviewed Vladimir Putin, by the way, Vladimir Putin was so amused by Tucker Carlson's easy questioning that he actually mocked him. Tucker Carlson has massaged the Iranian dictatorship and admitted to not asking any difficult questions of the president of that dictatorship.
The interview is limited by a couple of factors. One, it was done by remote through a translator. That's always awkward. For another, I don't speak Persian. And there are all kinds of questions that I didn't ask the president of Iran, particularly questions to which I knew I could not get an honest answer, such as, was your nuclear program totally disabled by the bombing campaign by the U.S. government a week and a half ago? There's no chance he's going to answer that question honestly. I didn't bother to ask it. The answer, in fact, from an American perspective, even from the CIA's perspective, is unknowable.
Tucker bizarrely worships at the altar of Qatar.
They're mad at you because you don't put your parents in some institution. Maybe they're trying to break up your families.
Well, it can be a reason. Honestly, I don't know what is really the purpose behind this, but we see that, you know, a lot of things that are happening are attacks on humanity in general. It's when you lose the family value, when you lose the connection between the family themselves, you will lose the connection between the people.
I really don't understand what he's trying to point out here. If anything, he's making Qatar look kind of endearing, even though I don't trust them. But this is a good point. Because again, it's the whole concept of, well, Qatar is funding Hamas, and that's all that really matters. Same with Hezbollah. But again, the genocidal state of Israel stands, and that is why they are doing what they're doing. They don't want them there. Neither do we. So naturally, Shapiro is going to spew this bullshit.
Well, on a broader level, on the people in the same neighborhood, on the people in the same region, in the same countries. And that's basically will just make us, you know, as individuals who are, quote unquote, independent from anyone. That's what we will feel. Yet it will just make our societies vulnerable and easy to be penetrated.
That's right.
Tucker Carlson praises Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, even as Maduro keeps the entire country in communist penury and ships fentanyl into the United States to kill Americans by the hundreds of thousands.
That is a bold-faced lie, and I don't know how people continue to get away with saying that. But it is no surprise that Shapiro would say something that is a, let's just say, State Department talking point.
Why are we so opposed to Nicolas Maduro? So if you ask someone on the street, random person, why are we against Nicolas Maduro? The answer you're going to get is, who's Nicolas Maduro? But if you find someone in South Florida, for example, who knows who Nicolas Maduro is, who can identify where Venezuela is on a map, that person will almost certainly say, well, because he's a communist or a socialist, he's exceedingly left-wing. And that is true. Nicolas Maduro and his government are very left-wing on economics. Not on social policy, by the way, which is kind of interesting. In Venezuela, gay marriage is banned, abortion is banned, sex changes for transgenderism are banned,
It's one of the very few countries in the entire hemisphere with those policies. It is on social policy, not defending the regime, just saying, one of the most conservative countries in North or South or Central America.
Here's the most important thing to know about Venezuela. And I will continue to point out how every single problem that exists in the world, overwhelmingly, maybe rarely, but overwhelmingly, in almost every case, it has to do with the fact that it is related in some way, shape, or form to money and power. And in the case of Venezuela, they have the largest supply of crude oil in the world under their soil, about 25% on the entire planet. And President Maduro does not want to do business with the United States. And he is backed by both China and Russia. And we are still trying to fuck with them and get our hands on their resources. Much like when Pelosi went over to Taiwan and created an international incident, well, Trump is doing the exact same thing with blowing up these boats, because we all know what they're trying to do. They're trying to force out Maduro, put in their puppet president, take control of the crude oil supply that's worth trillions of dollars. That's it. Anything to the contrary is a distraction.
Only El Salvador really comes close.
Tucker Carlson glosses Hamas, the genocidal jihadi group behind October 7th, as a political organization.
You can't claim that they're in Hamas while simultaneously claiming that Hamas is a group of jihadis. They're Islamic extremists, which they also claim constantly, which I don't know if that's true, by the way. It seems more like a political organization. But whatever it is, they're telling us constantly they're Al-Qaeda.
Tucker Carlson has attacked President Trump as a cover-up artist for sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein on behalf of Israel.
Yes. Yes. Maybe the most prophetic thing you've said, and you're saying it in the context of it's a lie. Is that what you're saying, Lil Ben? Shapiro? One more time.
Organization.
You can't claim that they're in Hamas while simultaneously claiming that Hamas is a group of jihadis. They're Islamic extremists, which they also claim constantly, which I don't know if that's true, by the way. It seems more like a political organization. But whatever it is, they're telling us constantly they're Al-Qaeda.
Tucker Carlson has attacked President Trump as a cover-up artist for sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein on behalf of Israel and Mossad.
I don't know how that little snippet is not clipped, replayed, and sent everywhere. There's a lot of things that you can say that still have plausible deniability in the political arena. But at this point, if you think that there isn't a cover-up of the highest level when it comes to the Epstein files, it is being perpetrated by the President of the United States on behalf of Israel. Why? How do I have proof? You have a congresswoman that was elected over almost 2 months ago, and they still won't seat her. Why? Because she apparently would be the deciding vote to get the Epstein files released. What are they going to do? Keep her out of Congress forever? This is gone so beyond the pale at this point. Just remember, folks, Lil Ben Shapiro is a genocidal, pedophile cover-up scam artist of the worst kind.
Making sure, of course, never to mention President Trump's name, because, of course, Tucker's a coward.
And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel, because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that.
Tucker Carlson has stated that President Trump has undermined America First and MAGA by attacking Iran, giving in to neocon ghouls like Mark Levin, while also idiotically arguing that President Trump striking Iran's nuclear facilities would lead to World War III.
Well, we're still in the process of getting there, and I like how you refer to Mark Levin as a neocon warmonger, but he also refers to you as one too. I guess you forgot to mention that part. Must have slipped your mind.
Spoiler alert, it didn't. Tucker Carlson also said in his interview with Nick Fuentes that the people he hates most in the entire world, more than ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Trans-Tifa, Marxists, rapists, murderers, are Christian Zionists who represent an enormous chunk of the conservative base. According to Tucker Carlson, who admits that he first read the Bible all the way through just 2 years ago, Christians who support a Jewish state of Israel are heretics and blasphemers with a brain virus.
How do you explain Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and there are a lot like that, John Bolton? I mean, I've known them all, George W. Bush, like Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen like be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. Most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, well, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that?
Right.
And I could just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody. Because like what? Because it's Christian heresy, and I'm offended by that as a Christian.
Tucker Carlson has said that he despises American Jews who care about October 7th. We, in his words, don't care about America and also want to get his kids killed in a foreign war.
I've got 4 draft-age children. So if you're playing recklessly, fast and loose with their lives, then I have a right to despise you, and I do.
The one thing that never gets pointed out enough is how Ben Shapiro, Lil Ben Shapiro, would never, ever consent to serving in the U.S. military, much less the IDF, although that's probably the one he would pick first. But he and many others will gleefully send your children off to die for the state of Israel. We caught it on camera. A very powerful liberal Zio rabbi in a very powerful synagogue that tried to muscle Jen and I recently, saying, you have to be willing to die for the state of Israel to survive. Well, guess what, Buttercup? No one is going to do this for you. Not now, not ever. You're almost done. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and your ideology will be dead.
So if you're Nikki Haley, who's running for president, or Ben Shapiro, or half the people I see on television casually mentioning the possibility of nuclear war or sending Americans to fight in the Middle East, or in any way involving us in a war that has nothing to do with prosperity and peace at home, nothing, in other words, to do with us, Americans, then I have a right to call you out and be really offended because it's my family. They live here. It's not a joke to me. There's nothing abstract about it.
But most of all, Tucker Carlson acts as an ideological launderer for other people's evils. Tucker Carlson says many inflammatory things, always buying back just enough of it to appear as though he's not saying what he's clearly saying. He's a master of gaslighting. Tucker Carlson, for example, would never say out loud what Nick Fuentes does. He wouldn't say the things many of his guests say. And so instead, he acts as an ideological launderer. He takes other people's hideous ideas, he softens them, he treats them with love and care, and then he provides them with a massive signal boost. He isn't merely talking to people in good faith, of course. He's promoting certain people and ideas and attacking others.
No, we're just putting an end to your ideology. That's what we're doing. You are anti-American. You are a bigot. You are also somebody who has peddled in your own conspiracies, like everybody better get the jab or they're in trouble. So much for bodily autonomy. Claim to be pro-life. Sure. Your loyalty is not with the United States. It is with Israel. And much of it is centered on your own financial gain, of which you are now suffering significantly for, because your multi-million-dollar empire is falling apart, and rightfully so. And hopefully soon enough, you will no longer be a relevant voice in any political sphere. Maybe you'll get a regular spot on CNN. You know, once the takeover is official on the part of the Ellisons, that's right, folks, the Ellisons are coming for CNN next. You'll have a regularly scheduled program there until hopefully that bottoms out as well. Your time is over. You just don't know it yet. Or maybe you do know it, and you're just trying to hang on for dear life. And whether Matt Walsh stays on with you, whether Michael Knowles stays on with you, all of that to me is irrelevant. What is relevant is that the world as a whole consensus sees you for what you are, sees what you've done, sees how you've profited, see how you've sent so many innocent people, especially innocent children, to their deaths by supporting this genocide for the past 2 years. You are a mass murderer by proxy, kid. Hopefully justice will be done someday on your behalf. And it can't come soon enough.